Welcome to The Owner's Exit, the podcast where business owners learn to plan smarter, exit stronger, and move forward with confidence. In each episode, you'll hear from industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and owners who've successfully navigated their exit. Together, we'll unpack the real stories and proven strategies beyond smooth, successful transitions, and share practical advice for your own exit planning journey. So if you're a founder, entrepreneur, or business owner thinking about what's next, you're in the right place. This is the Owner's Exit Podcast, where we help owners see to, through, and beyond the sale of their business. Barry, thank you for doing this. Obviously, as managing partner of our firm, but also just sitting down, sharing your story. I think we can get a lot of value out of your expertise and your experience, and we're real grateful for you to sit down. So sit down with us. You, through your experience, through your expertise, and your generational transition, you have experienced an exit both as a recipient, but then also help facilitate. And now here we are helping others exit. And so we're excited to share.
Pretty cool for full circle.
Yeah, we're excited. So, so why don't we start with, let's go back before you were in the wealth management business, and let's talk about your story, starting in the medical sales field and then transitioning into our business.
I'd start with University of Tennessee, where I graduated from, and I told someone just recently that the best thing I got out of UT was my wife, Melissa. You guys know her. We've been married 43 years this year. And she's just a remarkable woman. So we got married while I was still in school, finishing it up. And we lived in married student housing in Knoxville that no longer exists. I was a server in the athletic dorm. Back in the day, the NCAA allowed you to have separate athletic facilities and separate kitchen and all that kind of stuff. And so, that was back in the Reggie White era, Willie Gault era. Those guys ate well because I served them, I know. But I got to eat there as well. So we lived in married student housing. I got to eat there. Melissa was working on campus in a administrative assistant role. It was my last semester of school. And outside of my favorite class was farm animal management. I took that semester. Or learned to dehorn cattle, castrate sheep and pigs and all that kind of. It was a blast. But the other thing I was doing was interviewing for jobs. Graduating with a degree in marketing and had really no idea what to do outside of this was 1982. And true to the comments of one of the marketing professors, she goes, 98% of you guys are going to be in sales. I was fortunate enough to get connected with a division of American Hospital Supply back in the day, and got a job in sales with American Critical Care, which was their pharmaceutical arm. And we moved from Knoxville to Northeast Ohio in February. Thought we had moved to Siberia. It was cold. It was snowy. We moved to an area outside of Cleveland called the Snow Belt because I just wanted to be around a lot of snow, and we were. And that led to a transition from Cleveland. We moved to Kansas City. I took a sales management position there within American Critical Care. American Hospital Supply got purchased by Baxter during that transition, or during that time frame, and then Baxter sold our division that I was a part of to DuPont. So within a very short period of time, I went from working with American Critical Care to being a member of the DuPont team. DuPont was a fascinating organization to work for. All of my peers in my role as a sales manager at American Critical Care, we were all in our mid to late 20s, and one could argue that we were far too young to be doing what we're doing. When we went to DuPont, all of our peers were in their mid to late 40s, if not early 50s. So there was this incredible culture clash, and that was one of the first times I came face to face with the importance of culture in an organization, because you could just see such a vast difference there. And was with DuPont for a period of time, and wanted to move into the equipment side of healthcare sales because that's where the money was.
Yeah.
And actually had submitted my resignation to DuPont, was asked to reconsider if they moved me to the clinical chemistry division of DuPont, and they did. So we left Kansas City and I moved to Dallas to take over the Southwest in managing their clinical chemistry division. So we sold chemistry analyzers, blood analyzers, if you will, to hospitals and clinics.
So you were going into hospitals, meeting with doctors, soliciting them.
Laboratory
products.
personnel.
In scrubs?
Not at that point in time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's some other stories related to that when I was doing that. Yeah, I mean, back in Cleveland, this was back in the early '80s, but we had a drug that was used. No, it was a drug. We had a drug that was used as a plasma volume expander. So in our open heart surgeries, where people, and there were certain religious groups that didn't want to take blood transfusions. So this product was used as part of the bypass procedure in open heart surgery. So I asked if the perfusionist at this one hospital, if I could come in and watch the surgery. And guys, I'm telling you, I was as close to that coffee mug from this lady's heart. I mean, I could have reached over and just grabbed and pulled. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating to watch the whole process. So yeah, I had some scrub opportunities, but
it took you back to your farm animal studies.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I had dehorned a cow, I was qualified to, help split the sternum.
Sure.
So Texas.
Moved to Texas and was in clinical chemistry, sales management there. Mm-hmm. My first boss that lived in Cleveland called me and told me about this startup company called Pyxis, and ended up joining them. DuPont was a very, very unique culture, and it was needful for me to get out of that. And so Mark introduced me to Pyxis. Pyxis took the idea of a bank ATM, and the founders really thought if we can put money on a street corner in a box and allow people to go up and get it, why can't we do that with controlled substances in hospitals, so narcotics in hospitals? And that's what Pyxis started out as. Automated medication dispensing system.
Not for the public.
Not for the public, not on street corners, but inside of hospitals.
Yeah.
So joined Pyxis and continued to travel. And I'd just say this, part of the story, was when we moved to Kansas City, I started traveling. And our daughter was born in Cleveland, oldest son born in Kansas City, youngest son born in Dallas. But I traveled a lot. And so when I joined Pyxis, we moved to Memphis, and I continued to travel a great deal. And I went from a sales management role to a sales position with Pyxis. Great experience, great people, but the travel just continued to wear on me. So we moved to Nashville mid-90s to be closer to Melissa's family, my family. And it was through that transition that I really decided I needed to do something different. I wasn't sure what it was, but I just didn't want to travel anymore. And
that was the biggest driver?
That was really the biggest driver. I've known people throughout my career that they managed that well, the travel piece. But I just never seemed to be able to do that. I always felt like when I was at home that I was supposed to be on the road, and when I was on the road, I was supposed to be home. And it just got to the point where I felt like I needed to just make a change. And so we were here in town. There's a lot of healthcare, obviously, here in Nashville, but anything sales related that I felt like I was qualified to do
required travel.
And I didn't want to do that anymore. So that's what really led to the transition of what can I do? And I joked oftentimes with Melissa saying, well, I can go to work for the U.S. government, I can deliver mail, or I can pick up trash, and that I won't have to travel if I do that. Right?
Yeah.
But anyway, made the decision to talk to my dad about joining him in financial services, and that's what really led to that transition.
What year was that?
1998.
So 1998, you joined your dad.
Yeah.
He had a successful business.
And he had a practice going.
He did. Dad had started in financial services in 1955 and had worked his way up. He was a vice president of sales and partner with J.C. Bradford, which was a local broker-dealer based here in Nashville that had done really, really well. Interestingly enough, at one point in time, Tom James tried to get J.C. Bradford to buy them because they were unsure of their future, and so they came to Nashville and asking if they could be acquired. Thankfully, they didn't. That didn't happen because Bradford no longer exists and Raymond James still does. Yeah. But Dad had started in 55 through a number of different transitions. He left Bradford in 83 and worked for a company called Hilliard Lyons, and then in 1988, opened an office, which is our office now, with a division of Raymond James, which was at that time called Robert Thomas Securities. It was really Raymond James had the independent arm, but they had Robert Thomas, which was geared towards traditional stockbrokers. And they had IM&R, which became what we know now that is the Independent Contractors Division, which was really geared more towards planning and fee-based asset management. So Dad had the brokerage side of piece, and that's what I joined him in. It was on that side of the business in 98. Yeah.
So lots changed since then. Thankfully. How was the initial working with your dad in 1998? How was did he have his own book of business? Did you guys work together? How did that work, or were you just kind of on your own?
Pretty much on my own.
Yeah,
pretty much on my own. And Dad was helpful to the degree, but he was very, very old school. And the old school was, literally, if you got into this business, we're not going to put a cap on your earnings, but there's not going to be a whole lot of guidance. We're going to tell you about the rules, and obviously you have to pass the exams and those types of things. But there wasn't a lot of hand-holding. It's like you're dialing for dollars. Here's the phone book.
Here's the hot tip of the day.
Here's the hot tip of the day. Here's a couple of suggestions.
Yeah.
And you go at it. And Dad was really, really good at that. He grew up in that. It didn't suit my temperament. It was hard for me, that transition.
So, how old was he when you joined?
He was born in 28, so he was 60 when I joined him.
60 when you joined him.
Yeah.
So was that the plan, that there would be a transit? Were you the natural succession? Did you guys talk about that, or was that kind of loosely? No, Dad was 70 when I joined him. Yeah. 90 minus 20 is 70, right? Yeah. So 70 years old.
He was 70 years old.
38?
I'm 38-ish.
38-ish, yeah. Yeah. So my age now.
Yeah. So think of that. Think of your age with your family circumstances now.
Changing careers.
Totally changing careers. Walking away from salary, benefits, stock options that we had with Pyxis and all that type of thing, to no guarantees, no benefits, no salary.
A little bit of help, but not much.
Not much.
Yeah.
An opportunity is what you were given.
Yeah.
Sure. Later on, there was a transition that took place in the late 2000s. Talk to me and us a little bit about how that came about, why that happened, and a little bit of the inner workings there.
Transition in terms of how I did what I did, or the transition of Dad?
From your dad to you.
Yeah. So let's see, in 2008, Dad had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure. He had a hip replacement, had multiple health issues going on.
And he was 80 at this point.
He was 80 at this point in time. He went through a very a dangerous and exhaustive surgery, if I put it that way, cardiovascular. He had 2 valves replaced. He had a revascularization. a graft that he had done in 1985. And at the time, he was told if he didn't have the surgery, he might live 6 months. If he had the surgery and if he survived the hospital stay, he might live 5 years. Not great options. So he had the surgery. And that began a process for us. Dad went out for surgery in March of 2008. I think it was in that time frame, late winter, early spring. And we had talked loosely about what a eventual transition would look like, but we had never put anything in writing, hadn't had detailed discussions about what that might look like. So he goes out for surgery, and all I know is he's going out for surgery, and that's it. It's like, praying for you, Dad. Hope you do well. But in terms of the business, there wasn't really any, make sure you're doing this. So I just took what I knew how to do, and at that point in time, and started trying to make things work. Of course, 2008 was a not so uneventful time in the markets with the great financial crisis, and it was a time of incredible uncertainty in the market. So Dad was gone. 2008 hits. Late 2008 is when it really got ugly. But thankfully, through a couple of relationships, First National Bank in Pulaski came to us. Jerry Bass had joined our office at the time from Morgan Keegan, and Jerry had grown up in Pulaski, and they came to Jerry, asked if we would be interested in taking over their investment center. And Jerry brought me along as part of that process. I'm very, very grateful for that. But that was such a godsend, is what I think of that. It was a lifeline. So many different metaphors you could use. But during the great financial crisis, 2008 going into 2009, now all of a sudden we had an influx of new clients. We spent time, opportunity taking over that, and very, very thankful for that. And at the time, I would say this too, guys. I had determined that the traditional stockbroker was, not only was I not successful at it, it was hard for me. Didn't enjoy it. However, 2005-06, Raymond James had made more of a shift to start providing fee-based platforms. Mm-hmm. And I'll say it for the masses. When I mean masses, it's more for masses of the financial advisor, not so much for the clients, because they were always available. They just weren't championed, if you will, as a significant alternative. Thankfully, they started doing that, and when I looked into that, I thought I can get my head and my heart around, because now I'm telling a story. Now I'm providing a solution. I'm just not trying to sell something.
Sure. Yeah. More of a planning focus.
Pardon?
More of a planning focus?
Yeah, absolutely. More of a holistic, if this is what you're trying to do, these are some things that we can do to help you get there. And about that time, too, I started pursuing the Certified Financial Planner designation. So all of those things came together kind of at that time, and really provided some hope for me and some purpose, I think, for me in terms of what I wanted this business to potentially look like.
Yeah. Making that transition from your dad being a traditional stockbroker, you all maybe talking a little bit about succession, not much, but then him getting sick and you taking over the practice, purchasing the practice. If you could look back and kind of turn it into a lesson to share with a business owner thinking about succession, what is one key takeaway that you would have from that history and that process?
Start way before you think it's necessary. Yeah. In fact, I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday that's worked in a consulting manner with a couple of business owners recently. And when I was asking him about that, it was so interesting, as both examples that he shared with me have been challenging, to say the least, because they didn't start soon enough, didn't plan soon enough, didn't have time to talk about all the potential scenarios. And I think when you do that, that just puts a lot of pressure on the business. It puts a lot of pressure on the relationships. And certainly that's what I experienced with my dad. You know, I'm really very, very grateful for the opportunity Dad gave me. But gosh, there's some regret over how that transition took place, because it was, to say that it was less than optimal is an understatement. You know, he was sick. I'm sure he was scared health-wise. He had so many different things going on. After his surgery, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Because of the Crohn's, he's kept getting these significant systemic infections. He had new heart valves, and within 6 weeks of getting these new heart valves, those heart valves had been permanently damaged because of infection, and there's nothing they could do at that point in time. So you've got a man that's diabetic, Crohn's disease, bad heart valves, and thinking about what happens to this business now. And you know, the lack of planning and discussions ahead of time, it just created unnecessary tensions throughout that process, that time.
I want to dive in a little bit, take a turn here. And so I know a lot of owners, they're focused on cash flow. I'm sure your father was probably focused on cash flow, because that's what business owners, that's how they're wired. And so
that's how they're paid year to year.
That's how they're paid. And so
that's how they survive.
That's right. How they survive. How did you pivot, prioritizing enterprise value, prioritizing, you know, you wanted to build something bigger than yourself, not focus just on cash flow. How'd you prioritize that? And why is this shift significant for owners to grasp if they're thinking about exiting well?
Yeah. I use the term surviving because I think that's really what it is for most business owners. I mean, it's literally, you're just thinking about surviving. It's how do we get through the day? How do we keep our employees, pay them well, take care of our customers or clients? How do we just survive? And that occupies so much of your mindset, I think. The shift for me was a process over years, I think. For me, the first part of that, when I took the business from my dad and paid him, was that I didn't want to do this by myself. And that didn't mean just having other advisors in the practice. It meant truly having someone in the practice that I could partner with and I could grow with. And Steve, that's when you came along, and again, just so thankful for the timing of that. Thankful for your willingness to take the chance that you did. But that was part of that. It's just, I didn't want to do this by myself. And so that was a key part of that, was just that. But there was still, as you know, there was still just this survival mode.
Because now you got to, as the lead person, now you're responsible for another employee.
Right.
Which was me.
Right.
And so you can't just focus on you as an owner. You have to focus on the well-being of your people as well.
Right. And
so that started the next. So what?
And I think there's another key element of that too that comes along. Again, that mindset of surviving. I think business owners, you can focus on revenue generation, or you can focus on expense management, right? And oftentimes, as I saw this with what I grew up with and saw, is there was an overemphasis on expense management. And not that you need to be unwise in expenses, but if that's your focus, you start making decisions, and it's that survival mentality. You make decisions that are very short-sighted. How that manifested itself in our practice was we had tremendous turnover of our administrative staff. Because we were so expense focused, we would pay the bare minimum to get somebody in there. And we would lose people all the time because they could get 50 cents more an hour somewhere else. Well, the solution to that was to go find somebody that was making $1 an hour and pay them $1.10 an hour, right? And think that was going to make somebody happy and keep them there. So part of that shift for me was seeing the impact of, if all you focus on is expense, you're going to make some short-term decisions that just aren't wise. Again, not being foolish with expenses, but you've got to be able to invest long-term. So to change that mentality of saying the cost of us having this tremendous turnover of administrative assistants was greater than us paying somebody more and having better people around that would stay longer. So that was a big initial shift too. As I witnessed and got to know people in the business that had administrative teams that had been with them 10, 15, 20 years, I had such admiration for that. But that's part of that mentality is find good people, pay them well, take good care of them so they can help you build. And so that was part of the shift, I think.
So with that, the act of almost stepping out on a ledge in a way and saying, I'm going to write a bigger check each month to bring on somebody that I know is going to have more longevity, serve clients in a more professional way, provide better service. While now it hindsight's 2020 and it's worked out great. That initial step, I'm sure there's a little bit of fear that came with that.
Sure.
What led you to getting over that and saying, okay, I think this decision is worth at least trying?
I think anyone that's lived through lots of turnover would understand that. There's just such a cost to that because you're constantly training people and all you get is just bare minimum client service. And you're spending a lot of your time either fixing mistakes, trying to prevent mistakes. Not that they're bad or incapable people, but that you're kind of get what you pay for in a way. So it was that. If I was seeing people that had practices that I admire, one of the key components of those practices was longevity of staff. And it just didn't take long for me to go, well, I think there's a real correlation between the two of having good people that you kept long-term and that helped you build. And so I look at it as, and I'm sure most business owners would as well, is that there's a place where you just have to start investing in your team. And it's an investment. You can't look at it as I'm going to pay minimum wage, because if you get minimum wage, you're probably going to get minimum output. But you invest in the team beyond what you think you're capable of doing, and you just trust that it's going to work. And thankfully it has.
I want to talk a little bit about an owner trying their hardest to control the direction of a business. I want to use the term owner centricity, but really an owner carrying the bulk of the weight with the business moving in a certain direction. It takes a lot for a business owner to say, I want to bring somebody else to take on a lot of the responsibility that I'm currently doing for the sake of business growth. Because most business owners have gotten to where they are because of the load that they've carried up into that point. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that's such a challenge? And then for you, what allowed you to get past that, to bring Steve on initially, apart from just not wanting to do it by yourself?
I think if my experience is normal, and I think it probably is, most owners get where they are because they're good at what they do. And I'm not saying I was that great at what I did, but you're comfortable with how you do what you do. You develop your methods. This is how I do things. I've got my stride. And to invite somebody else into that process really comes down to, I've got to give up some control. I have to be willing, if I'm going to delegate, which is what we're really talking about, if I'm going to allow someone else responsibility for some of these things, I have to be willing to accept their results, accept their processes, how they do things, the nuances of how they do things. understanding it's not going to be the way that I would do it. They won't say things the way that I say them. There's a lot of different little things like that. But you have to be willing to go, that's okay. Because what's really important is building. And so for me, that's where I felt this big, and it sounds trivial in a way, but it was this moment of going, I'm going to stop trying to correct everything that's not done the way that I would do it, because it was totally counterproductive. It made employees feel like all I was doing was correcting all the time. It was hampering productivity, and it was eating my lunch of going, oh, why can't they? Well, they're not me, right? And that's really the reason that you hire them, is because they're not you. So I think it gets to that, is there's a place where you've got to be willing to give up control, got to be willing to have things done a little bit differently than you do them, knowing and trusting if you're hiring people of the right character, at the end of the day, the clients are going to be served well, probably better. It's just not going to look like you were doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think about the two of you and how different you both are. And I would argue when I stepped into the business in 2019 with you guys, it was as successful and productive as it was and still is today because of the opposite ends of the spectrum, driving the ship in the same direction and the strengths that both of you have. It's like the old analogy, greater than the sum of its parts.
Sure.
And I think that's on full display, with the two of you guys.
So as the leader, you brought on myself, we grew, brought on Austin. How, you're entering into a transition season, a business owner's entering into transition and taking off some of the hats. How is an owner still able to maintain an influence in that business? And then how do they navigate? They have to let that baby go. Take that hat off. That responsibility's here because you're focusing on growing the business.
Yeah.
How did you navigate that, and how would you recommend others to do the same?
It's a huge mindset shift, I think. And I'll use the term, there's some humility and some meekness that, if I can use that term, that's required. Because you've got to be willing to, as I said, set aside some of your pride, how you do things, to let other people do that and let them grow. I think some of that too is just the trust that you build with a team over time. Makes it, at least it has for me, it's certainly made it easier to step back and watch you all do the things that you're doing differently. We would not be having this conversation, for example, today in this place if it were left up to me, because that's not my mindset to push in those areas. And I'm thrilled for this, though.
Yeah.
Right. But I wouldn't be doing this. And I think it's going to be really healthy for our practice overall. I think our clients are going to benefit from it. But it's not because of me. It's because of what you guys are doing.
So in order to build scale, you've got to take some hats off. Let other people drive it. They may not do it the same way you do, and that's healthy for the organization as a whole. But you can't do the same. You don't have that amount of time to do what I'm doing and what he's doing. And so in order to scale, you just have to let go of responsibilities and be okay with that.
Yeah, you do. and be okay with it, or be really good at talking about it as a team.
Yeah.
Right. Because it just creates tension. There's tension in going in a different direction, and there's a reason that you guys go in a direction that I don't. But to get me there, it probably feels like pulling a sled, right? And so, but the ability for us to be able to talk about that,
That sled has a lot of wisdom, though. and
it's greased up like in Christmas Vacation.
Oh, yeah.
And it keeps us from going down hills that we probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but still a sled nonetheless. But I do think just the ability to talk about that, and again, to develop the trust in your team, to acknowledge it, to me is really, really important.
Yeah.
In allowing those transitions to take place.
We've talked a lot about giving up control, allowing transitions to take place. And I think on the surface, the idea of exit planning or succession planning, it makes total sense, not only for the business owner, but also for the growth of the enterprise value of the business. But when you get inside an individual business, and especially inside an individual business owner's mind, there can be a lot of hesitation taking that step. What would you say is the biggest fear a business owner has in switching their focus to more of an exit planning mindset as opposed to just year-to-year business ownership?
I think it's the uncertainty that change introduces. You know, if I've got a successful business, I know how to do that. There's always uncertainty with that, but now if I'm intentionally planning an exit, that's a whole different thing than me running the business. Significant mindset. So I think there's just a lot of uncertainty with putting a plan together, what the implementation of that plan means. I mean, the implications of that are significant. So I think I would describe it that probably the uncertainty. You could describe fear.
Yeah. Fear is the word that came to my mind.
Of change. Uncertainty sounds better. But I do think that that's it. It's being willing to look at that. And it's much like making an investment in the practice. This is making an investment in a different sort of way, but it's the same type of thing. It's doing something that you're not comfortable with for the long-term benefit, and trusting that the process you go through is going to achieve close to the results that you think it and hope it would.
Yeah, what would you say, or what advice would you give to a business owner who knows they need to talk about exit planning, knows they need to talk about succession planning, but it's sensitive? They may have employees that aren't going to be involved in the exit that would be surprised or not fond of exit planning news because it brings uncertainty to those employees as well. Yeah. There may be competitors or customers that when they hear that news may look elsewhere because they know the business is going to evolve and change over the next 5 or 10 years. How do you navigate, I'll call the perception of leaving a business with the need to actually do that work for it to be successful?
Yeah. I think that gets back to the question earlier of what I tell any business owner regarding succession planning. And I think it start long before you think you need it. Mm-hmm. And
as we've learned, 50% of all business successions or business exits are involuntary. It's something that they didn't plan for. Yeah. And so you need to have a plan for that. And so.
Right. So if I know far enough in advance that I'm going to exit the business, I can plan for that eventual exit, and I can help educate, key constituents, those key employees, right, that may or may not be a part of that exit. Let them know well in advance, and you can implement a plan over time. Also demonstrate to clients that just because you may not eventually be there, their level of service isn't going to change. In fact, it may get better.
Yeah.
Right. Certainly probably won't get worse. But I think it all gets back to that timing aspect of giving yourself plenty of time on the front end, if at all possible, to plant the seeds, to do the work, so that you eliminate as many surprises as possible.
Well, when we think about exit planning, we're talking about it right now in the form of I have a date 3 years, 5 years out that I would like to exit and move on to whatever's next, whether that's starting another business, whether that's moving on into retirement. But we know exit planning at its core really is creating something that's transferable and attractive at any point in time. And so when you're doing the hard work of exit planning, it doesn't have to be, I'm getting ready to not be here anymore in 3 to 5 years.
Right.
It's I'm doing the work even from when you start the business, that if a potential buyer comes in and wants to make an outsized offer, that the business is in a good spot. So that when at the point when the time comes to exit, whether that is to retire, the business is already transferable and ready at that point in time.
Sure. But even as you were speaking, I was thinking too of just the necessary communication with the key people inside of the business. Because an exit plan necessitates that there's somebody that you transition things to. And if there are people inside of the business, key people that are key to the valuation of that business, the longer that you help them plan or engage them in that planning process, the greater awareness they have of the intent, all of that, the higher the likelihood that they're going to stick around and help you maximize that value of the practice. Because if you transition and all the key people leave, that's not good. Not good for anyone. And
Right.
so
Right.
I think the timing and engaging people on the key critical parties are really important.
We were talking with Joe Maxwell a little bit ago, and he had talked about how he coaches a lot of business owners to, it might not be a good, an exit might not be in your best interest. Why are you selling? Why are you looking to exit? And so oftentimes he tells them to stay. If you've got a good business, it's running good. You've got a good team in place. Why? We have worked through, we've got some contingencies in place to protect the downside for our business.
Yeah.
Should something happen to you. But we obviously would hope that you can work as long as you want to.
Right.
But for business owners that's looking to have a succession plan, what's one key lesson that you've learned in giving you an opportunity to exit, but also giving you an opportunity to stay? What's one key thing that you've learned in building your team to accomplish that?
I think the thing that comes to mind is knowing as best you can what that team's going to look like or should look like, and be prepared to build that team even if you're not, quote, ready to make the hire, right? Because in both of your all circumstances, you could look back and go, well, you could look for a lot of different reasons. The timing wasn't right. But, oh man, what a miss that would have been to not look at the individual and go, I need that person on the team. And so thankful that we did that. So I think that in terms of building that team, it's just knowing what you're looking for and being willing to do what you need to do to find, when you find them, do what you can to add them to the team.
So know what you need, know what you're looking for, and then be patient. But when you find them, pull the trigger.
You got to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Because I've known people that have not planned for their transitions because they haven't found that right person. And the more you talk with them, it's not that they haven't found the right person. It's just that they decided, well, when I'm X age, I'm going to start looking for that person. When the right person, you listen to them, and the person that just left their business was the right person. They just didn't realize it.
They didn't plan.
Yeah. Right. So,
Yeah. Barry, I think you're uniquely suited to speak, not only because of your discussions and conversations with business owners who are running a family business and have either children or parents, I'll call it generation 1, generation 2, working inside of the business, but also because of your experience working with your dad, how would you speak to business owners navigating those personal family relationships in conjunction with the need to do actual successive business planning?
Gosh. Communicate. With everyone involved.
To go back to your point earlier, probably a lot sooner than you think you need to.
A lot sooner than you think you need to. Be willing to have hard conversations where those conversations are needed. I think hedging on having hard conversations plants seeds of incredible discontent down the road. It can, between family members. Because oftentimes you'll find some family members may express that they're not interested in the business, but they're certainly interested in the fruits of the business, right? And I've heard and seen stories of where clear communication wasn't had, and that just creates lots and lots of issues that could have potentially been avoided where just hard conversations would have been had on the front end. And often, I think, just making sure that people are clear, understand these are the plans, and that there's no misunderstanding as best as possible.
So shifting gears a little bit. So a business owner, that they're used to getting a certain amount of cash flow out of their business. How would you, being in wealth management, how do you guide someone from being used to receiving cash flow from a business to living off the proceeds post-sale? Talk about that. There's a mind shift switch because they don't have as much control.
Right.
Can you talk about what that might look like?
Let me go back and add one additional comment to the question Austin just asked, because I was, again, just reflecting on this conversation I had with this gentleman yesterday. How many times have we heard about, and I think of college athletics, where an iconic coach obviously is entering the twilight of his career, and everybody's anticipating retirement, and he hires ABC, unbelievable assistant coach, with the expectation he's going to be here, he's going to learn the ropes for the next 3 years. Well, 3 years comes and goes, 5 years comes and goes. Year 7, the assistant coach leaves. Year 10, they fire the old coach. Right? Heard the story yesterday of a family that had done incredible planning. Hard conversations were had because there were competing interests on the siblings in terms of who was going to be involved. When it came right down to it, the dad didn't want to give up control. Switched it. I mean, like at the 0 minute, went, nope, it's not going to happen. So I think that there's another element of that too, that if you do all of that work, you really do have to be willing to say, for the health of the business, and especially if it's a family business, for the health of the family, the dynamics and all of that, if you commit to a plan, then see it through. Because there's not much good that comes out of it when you don't do that.
I think that's such a good point, Barry. And we see that so often, not only in our industry with an older advisor, but also family-run businesses, businesses where you bring on a general manager that's younger, that you anticipate succeeding, and it gets to the 1-inch line, right? And then the business owner says, well, this is going better than it ever has. Like, why am I gonna step out now? And this, again, maybe a question that we don't have an answer to, but what's the difference psychologically for a business owner that says, this has been the plan all along, it's time for me to give up, it's time for me to move on to what's next, versus the business owner that gets to that 1-inch line and then pulls back?
I think it would come down to value and identity. Because if my identity is wrapped up in my conference championships and, the hardware in the trophy case, I have no opportunity for that once I step away. You can imagine how difficult that would be, right? If you're competitive in all of that. So I think that's where it lies at the heart of what's driving the whole transition. I think it would have to get back to, we were talking about earlier, just the willingness to admit the time, be okay with the time, be okay with the change, and be okay with the fact that that chapter of my life is going to go away. That's not where I drive my ultimate value anyway. And that's going to look different for, everyone. But I do think that that's a really key part of just the willingness to step away. And because that's not where I'm not going to get my identity from that and my value. I'm still okay. My wife, my kids, my grandkids are still going to love me, even if I'm not in the role I'm in.
Yeah. And what we found, and we could all agree, is that if you try to figure that out at the 1-inch line, you're most likely going to pull back.
That's right.
You're
going to call timeout.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You may let the play clock run out. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to put a lot of time, thought, and effort into, well before you cross the 50-yard line, to stick with the football analogy. Yeah. Steve likes to say, and I love this, that when you exit a business, you have to have something to set the alarm for that next morning. Yeah. And if you try to figure that out after you sell or when you're on the 1-inch line, most business owners regret selling because there is so much identity, so much purpose, so much tied into the value that they receive, not monetarily, but psychologically from owning that business.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I think of this as that, yes, that's a great expression. You have to have some reason to set the alarm. The reality is when you get my age, from most people that run businesses, you don't have to set the alarm. You're going to get up anyway, right? So you better have something that the alarm doesn't go off, you're still going to wake up. So you better have something that when you wake up, you're doing, right? Yeah. Because you can't get in the car and go to the office or plant or whatever again.
Steve, we hijacked your question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Here I am. I'm like, I want to talk about the financial side of things. No. But going back to the financial side, so there's a transition. We talked about the psychology transition. What are you going to do? Well, there's also there's some financial implications. You're used to having your golden goose, which is your business. Right. If that golden goose is no longer away, you've got a influx of cash. There's a mind shift switch there. You don't have as much control. And so can you talk about what an owner, talk about what that looks like for an owner? Used to running a business where they have control, and then now stepping out and having a little bit less control.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I think that it's important that one evaluates their own personal expenses. And what personal expenses do I justify because I have the business that I have? That could be a certain level of travel. Right. When I go, rather than me staying at the Motel 6, I might be staying at whatever, right? Because I'm in the business, right? You can just justify things. It could be memberships in organizations, a lot of different things, expenses that you incur personally just because you're in the business. Sometimes business owners, depending upon the type of business, will take advantage of opportunities to see some personal expenses kind of blend with business expenses. It could be the fuel that you put in your vehicles. It could be your cell phone plan. It could be a number of different things that the business pays for, and not that anyone's violating any rules, but they flow through that way. So I think it's really important that one steps back and goes, okay, when I truly exit and I'm not generating a paycheck, I'm not from this, what are my expenses really? And I think most people will be a little bit surprised by that. So I think that's a critical consideration, because I think then you can back into start looking at, if it's a sale, what are the terms of that sale? Are the proceeds from that sale going to occur hopefully in a tax efficient way, such that at the end of the day, from those proceeds, I'll be able to generate enough income to support my lifestyle. And to know on the front end, as you're going into negotiations, what those expenses really are, not what you just think they are, but what they really are. So as you go through the negotiations, just make sure that your net sales proceeds at the end of the day are going to support your lifestyle as best as possible. And you can't always do that, because sometimes someone's lifestyle will be inconsistent with the value of their business. And the value of the business it is what somebody's going to pay for it, right? But hopefully you'll be able to. They're close enough to where you could say, if I get X, then I can continue to live this way.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think what you said there about the net number is extremely important to consider, because not only are taxes going to be extracted from that big sales price, it could be regular income, it could be capital gains, and that's going to make a difference.
Right.
A lot of times business owners, when they sell a business, will hire a broker to go facilitate that sale, just like you would a real estate agent, to sell your home. And there's going to be, a percentage fee, success fee that broker takes. You're probably going to have some M&A attorneys that work on contract law that you're going to have to pay them. Mm-hmm. You may have debt on the business that you have to pay off. And so, not going off that top line number as far as, is this a good deal for me long term, but going off that net number is ultra important to securing success post-exit.
Absolutely.
And then have a discussion probably with your spouse about, are there any other expenses that we're looking to do post-sale, because that net number is really, that's what's left, and that's what you're going to live off of. And so, if there was expectations for a beach home, or a couple of expensive cars, or a farm, or a cabin, something like that, upgrades,
right?
You need to have a discussion for that too, because that's it. Once you're at the end of the sale, that net number that's what you're going to live off of. Yeah,
I mean, there's clearly, obviously, there are owners that will transition and they'll go on to the next deal, right? And they'll take some of the proceeds of that and they'll invest in the next deal, and they have that mindset. But for many, it's the last deal, and it's that last thing that it's just make sure that you can cover the way that you want to live, because there's not going to be another deal.
Yeah. Steve, you were saying it's important to have a conversation with I thought you were going to say CPA, not
that
spouse.
Too.
And I was going to say
more
spouse.
Important.
That's certainly the first conversation. But just having a qualified professionals in your corner, right? People that know what they're doing in the exit planning space. Because you're just used to running a business, right? And so leaning and relying on people that know the space, know the area, have been through it before, is just ultra important. And that leads me a little bit into estate planning. And we think about estate planning as just general personal assets, will, maybe a durable power of attorney. But for a business owner, I think it's even more important to focus on estate planning, not at the point of contract, but really when we focus on exit planning 3, 5, 10 years prior to exit. Talk a little bit about the importance of that. Why do business owners need to jump on this today?
Well, thankfully, with the recent legislation that's passed, there's going to be a lot of businesses that will never generate the kind of wealth that would trigger an estate tax. You think, what's the unified credit amount? Roughly a little bit over $30 million now.
For a married couple.
And that's going to grow with inflation. There certainly are businesses that are larger than that, but a lot aren't.
Yeah.
And so from a taxation standpoint, that's not going to be an issue. But it's more the transition, family dynamic, all of that's really, really important to make sure. Because still, even if your estate is $20 million, you don't have a taxable estate, but you still have a very large estate. And so to plan wisely with that transition, not necessarily to avoid tax, but to avoid family issues.
Family tax.
Family tax, you could put it that way. Really, really important.
What are some of the implications? Can you come up with a story or a scenario where that could be an issue, where maybe they don't have an estate tax issue, but it is sizable? What kind of problems, if that's not communicated well with the family?
Jealousy amongst siblings. If there's second marriages involved, and children of your spouse brings children into a marriage, and you have children, that you could run down and create scenarios out of that. But even if that's not the case, you've got, as we referenced earlier, you may have some children involved with the business, some children not. I can think too, even if your kids aren't involved with the business, we've talked about this, the necessity of clearly communicating with them on the front end, so that everyone in the family understands exactly this is how the transitions work, and here are the plans. We've worked with attorneys. We've done all of this just to make sure.
Here are the professionals that can help you.
Yes. But as much as anything, just to answer the question, there is a plan. It was put together with intentionality, and it was put together to be fair to everyone.
I want to switch and talk a little bit about what I'm going to call the estate plan of the business, but really it's a succession agreement that's put in place, that's signed, that, Barry, if you own a hardware store and you were in a fatal accident and passed, what happens to that hardware store upon that? Talk a little bit about the importance of, yes, absolutely doing the personal work on the estate planning side, but having things and measures in place, even life insurance in place, to where if something were to happen to you, the business could continue on and retain not only its recurring revenue, but also the enterprise value of that company.
Sure. It's very, very important, but I think it gets back to that idea of investing in the business, and that's part of that. To do that well, to have those business plans in place, to do it well, you're going to spend money on legal fees to do that, make sure it's done correctly, that it stands up. And that, to me, that's an investment in the business, and that protects employees, and protects the owner's family, but it certainly protects the employees in the business, and really the service to customers and clients as well.
And how would you, what's a metric that you can determine where one can know that their succession plan is successful? Like what's one measurement that you can find?
I think it would be different for most people. And I want to say that it's more qualitative than quantitative, because a lot of transitions you would look and go, well, that was really, really successful from a financial standpoint. But at the end of the day, does it address the human issues, the issues of purpose and value, and has it reinforced that, allowed that to grow and continue on? I think the qualitative side of that, again, assuming you're not taking a sale proceed and reinvesting, but this is the last deal, if you will, the last opportunity, and you transition out, to be able to sit down a year later and go, so thankful. Miss the people, miss the interaction. But golly, the things I'm able to do now that I wasn't able to do before. I think that would be a measurement.
Barry, could you tell us a story about a time where an exit didn't go as planned?
Austin, that makes me think about a story that we heard from our visit with Four Bridges Capital, where they were involved with a transaction that through their expertise, they were able to get this business owner much more for his business than he had ever imagined it could be worth. And in terms of the deal, everything where anyone would look at and go, gosh, what a great deal. And really at the meeting to sign the documents, business owner was late for the meeting, finally showed up, was appreciative of all the work, agreed that the deal was awesome financially, just had one last question, is that could he come back to work on Monday? And of course, the new owners were going, no.
We're paying you not to come to work on Monday.
I'm paying you not to come back to work. And the seller took the deal off the table because he couldn't cross that line of where's my value and my purpose going to come from.
Yeah. I guess to build on that then, what is one lesson that you would leave to an entrepreneur or business owner who knows they need to do the hard work of exit planning?
Start sooner than later, before you think you need to. And I think to answer the qualitative question of purpose and value, start digging into that long before. We get lots of accolades for building things, and if you're successful in your business, people want to be around you. They want to interview you. Those kinds of things. You step away from that. The microphones go away. All those types of accolades that you get, and you get reinforcement from that. So when it's just you at home, what are you going to do with that? It's almost like I said, what a person is when they're by themselves says more about them as an individual than anything else, right? How they behave, the things they do. And I think that gets to that is there a core value belief system that you would be comfortable with not having any externals come in to try to reinforce it?
Say a business owner is getting ready to exit, and they're getting close to, they see the light at the end of the tunnel, but they hit a roadblock. There's some unforeseen circumstances. How would you guide a business owner to pivot to keep things on track?
Yeah. I think the best way to think about that is like any other roadblock that happens. You have to step back and acknowledge the situation, whatever occurred. I mean, that's reality. Is the plan still valid? And it may be that it's not a no, but it's a not yet in terms of execution of the plan, and being okay with to transition mindset of timing, not necessarily purpose or the steps of the plan, but it may take longer now. If your key employee leaves, well, that doesn't take away your desired exit, but it may now mean that you've got to find a new key employee in the time that it's going to take to do that, get them up to the same speed. So I think it would just get back to making sure that the objective of the plan is still valid, the purpose of the plan is still valid, resetting the mindset of
might take a little longer.
May take longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Barry, thanks so much for your time today. We've certainly enjoyed it. Last question for you. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream, and why is that flavor superior to all other flavors?
Mint chocolate chip.
From a particular vendor or
Yes.
Are you agnostic?
Oh,
No.
we're getting specific.
Yeah, very, very specific. And I can't remember the brand's name. Oh my gosh, this is terrible.
No free ads.
Huh?
No free ads.
Their tagline used to be, "We eat all we can and we sell the rest." They're from Texas.
Not Bluebell.
It is Bluebell. Thank you. Because the blue bonnets in Texas. So, mint chocolate chip ice cream. My first exposure to Bluebell was with my friend Dave Simmelbeck. We were living in Texas at the time. Dave and his wife Penny, were living down in the city of Dallas. Dave was in seminary at Dallas Theological Seminary, and they were managing a group home for the Department of Child Services for Texas. So they were down. There was a really neat old house, big old house, had an old swimming pool. It was probably built in the 60s. You can imagine back in the day, it was this beautiful mansion, but I think it had like 14 bedrooms or something like that. Anyway, but now it was a group home that had a swimming pool. So Melissa and I went down and spent an afternoon with Dave and Penny. All the kids were gone for some reason, but never had Bluebell ice cream. And so Dave brings out this half gallon of mint chocolate chip Bluebell ice cream in 2 spoons, and he and I just pounded it. Finished.
That's great.
I may have licked the carton, I think, at the end of the day. So yeah, mint chocolate chip.
Chocolate chip.
Bluebell.
Yeah. Barry, thanks for your time.
Thanks for your time.
Guys, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you guys are doing, and it's a thrill to see this as part of the exit plan in a way, that you all are doing this and thinking about our practice in the long term, what that looks like. And it's very satisfying, to say the least. Thankful for you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Same.
Yeah.